Hello, everybody. I am John O'Loughlin. Welcome to McDuff Lives, and welcome to our Friday live chat with Marcia.
Good morning. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
And it's a beautiful day here. A little chilly, but it's a perfect March day, I would say, here on Mystery Island.
You know, that's true. Yesterday was gorgeous, but I did hear a weather forecast that said that our temps were about 10 degrees higher than usual, and today was going to be typical for March. So
Yeah,
you're absolutely right. It's a breezy, kite flying kind of day.
sweater weather.
Sweater weather. Ooh, sweater weather.
Yeah. Well, it's also a special day for us that follow my dad's story, the McDuff story, as we call my father, Thomas F. O'Loughlin Jr. Happy birthday, Daddy. It's March 21st, 2025, and you would be 105 years old today if you had survived. But your life was cut short at just barely 51 years of age. He turned 51 in 1971, of course, and then on June 6th of 1971, he died. And it was cancer, and it was sudden onset. I think it might have taken no more than 6 months for it to progress to the point where he died. And the story of that is a very difficult one. I told a good bit of it in my book, McDuff Lives, but the effect on the family is, I still feel it. It still hits me in the gut when I think about those times. Completely mysterious. My dad said goodbye to me when he dropped me off at college in September of 1970. And from that point on, I think it was Thanksgiving when my mother told us that he had cancer, and I think it was Christmas when they determined that it was metastasized, and that he was not going to be coming home. And then it was so strange that in March of 1971, he was awarded the highest medal that the Secretary of Defense can give for meritorious service. And he told my mother, because he was in the hospital. I mean, he wasn't at home. He told my mother, though, that he was going to get this award and we could come if we wanted to. So we went and we saw him get the award, and I've still got
At the hospital?
No, at the Pentagon. He got the Pentagon.
So he was in the hospital, but he left the hospital to go to the ceremony.
And I don't know how that happened. Maybe they sent an ambulance or something. But yeah, see, they kept him in the hospital until he died in June, and nobody really stays in the hospital for 6 months.
That just blows my mind. I don't even know if that was typical for back then.
No, they were isolating him, and I was told not to try and go visit him. But of course, that's the beginning of my book, was when I decided to defy that and went over and visited him. And it was, it's apparent to me right now that they isolated him and didn't want him to be able to tell me stuff, because he had stuff that if I knew it, then I'd be a target too. So he wanted me and my sisters to be, separated from that. But of course, me being his son, I could not look. And so I've spent a good bit of my life trying to uncover what really happened. I must say we've had a lot of help since I wound up the law practice and started doing this more full time. And it was 5 years ago this weekend that we had our charrette here on Mystery Island.
Right.
And so many people that have become lifelong friends were there,
And went and visited your dad's grave.
Yes,
What a
and
beautiful ceremony that was.
it was indeed. Yeah, yeah. So we thank everyone that follows the McDuff story. Yesterday we had a really exciting show with George Webb,
Yes.
who's been with us all the way. Once I told George about my dad, and we started going around Washington visiting the sites and getting into the records together. We went to the archives a number of times, and he has really seized upon this story, and I think he's got a lot of he's contributed a lot to my work. Let's just put it that way. George is some kind of a genius, and when he can put things together, and who knows how he does it, but a remarkable man, George Webb.
Yes. Yes. And a good friend. He has supported you. And I remember that moment when you came home after the first time you met George and you said, I've met this person and I've told him the story and he gets it and he believes me.
Yeah,
Because you had been searching, you had been meeting with so many people trying to tell them the story and
yeah,
they didn't get it, They patronized you. They just went, oh, okay, thank you for coming, bye-bye. And you were so joyful to finally have found somebody who understood.
yeah.
And yeah, George has been a good friend in that regard. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not only digging up his history and his career, but also confronting the possibility that he was murdered with cancer,
Right.
and that's a tough one for a lot of people to take on. Uh,
Oh, yes,
it's
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I have in telling people about your book and telling people about your dad's story, I don't know how many times, I have said that, I'll talk about it. And they'll say, well, how did he die? And I'll say cancer. And they go, you know, as if to say, you can't kill someone with cancer.
oh right, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember when I launched the book over in Ireland, and
Oh,
our
yes.
good friend Edward O'Loughlin over in Ireland. I don't know how we are connected, except for that we're all of the O'Loughlin clan. But he organized a number of clan rallies every 5 years or so, and I attended the first one in 1995, and he and I became friends at that time. And then Edward was so kind as to organize a book launch for me
What
in
a lovely man.
in
Yeah.
Ennis in County Clare in August of 2022.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember giving a bit of a lecture or introduction to the book, and somebody asked that question. Wait a minute, you mean you can kill? I didn't know you could. Can they kill
Right.
somebody with cancer?
It was Catherine. I remember that.
Yeah,
In fact, I think that's in the video. We made a video of that speech that you did that day and talking about your dad's story and talking about the book.
yeah,
And then Catherine asked that question. And I think we included that in the video because it is such a foreign concept to so many people.
it is. It truly is something that not only is it shocking, but it's something that I think there's some kind of a force field that envelops people that protects them against having to investigate
Mm-hmm.
their deepest concerns,
Mm-hmm.
and to look behind the assumptions that yes, the medical people are on our side, yes, the government protects us, yes, the banking system
Right.
is solid, yes, our,
Yeah.
our armies is all on our side, and yes, our government's doing its best to prevent dangerous drugs from coming into the country. Is and no, nobody would ever try to kill somebody with cancer. You know that's just too. It's on the other side of that force field to me.
Well, I think there are a lot of people who think it's physically impossible. How do you give somebody cancer? A lot of people that believe that cancer is something that just happens, or it's something that happens over a period of time when you're exposed to carcinogens.
Yeah,
But as I have said to more than one person, how do you think they study cancer? They just don't wait around for some white mice to develop cancer and say, oh, look, we diagnosed these 10 mice with cancer so we can put them in our study. No, they give the animals cancer. That's how they study cancer. It's, to me, a little obvious, but oh well.
Yeah, and then you put those oncogenic items into the animal, and guess what?
Right.
It ends up in the general population.
And if you can do it to animals, you can do it to human beings. A lot of chat there.
Yeah, let's say hello to folks. Corky is here. Corky Goss, our good friend. Corky, I think you were there at our. It wasn't the first one, and it was the next one next year. But appreciate your making the journey down. It was great to meet you personally. And my goodness, that beautiful piece of art that you made with the three of us, Professor Hamamoto and George Webb and myself. And you gave it to me, and it's a treasure. And I wish I had it at hand. I could show it to folks, but I must do that in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Corky, it's just great. Let's see. And Corky says Tom's is an unsolved murder. I just didn't want to say it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It was a murder.
Yeah. By the way, I was interested to see a new face pop up on my X feed. A person with the handle War on Us, WARONUS. And he is really pushing the idea that this is the biggest mass murder in history. And, you know, the details of which I haven't dug into yet, but murder, that's a really good word for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. In a bad system, if you're too good, you get targeted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Isn't it the truth? Here's a new name for me, Annie B. Nanny. Hello, Annie. Now listened from Oakland County, Michigan. Discovered your channel via Professor Hamamoto. Oh, we were just speaking of
That's
him,
right.
our good friend. Thank you, and it's happy birthday to my dad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, George Webb started calling me McDuff too, so I just let it stick.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, why not?
Well, you're McDuff Jr.
Patriot designer, hello. Cognitive dissonance. Yeah, that's that force field, you know. Cognitive dissonance. I have two propositions that are opposite to each other, and I can't just figure out which one it is. So I say stay stuck in the middle, and that's the deer in the headlights. That, oh my God, run or stay, fight or flight.
Well, it also is about survival. Children do this. Children do this with their parents. When their parents demonstrate bad judgment, children are unable to recognize that. And children will say to themselves, will think to themselves, my parent can't be capable of bad judgment because that threatens my survival. Therefore, I must have bad perception, or I must be stupid, or whatever a child tells him or herself. It's the same kind of thing that we do now, as we say, our government wouldn't lie to us, our officials wouldn't lie to us.
Yeah.
It's about our survival, because if we find out that our government is lying to us, then our survival is threatened. People don't want to know that. But guess what, guys? Our survival is threatened.
I feel like our survival is threatened as long as we don't know what those drones have been. There's a new big batch of them showing up in Florida now off Daytona Beach, I notice. And that's a place where they've shown up a number of times. And yeah, and when George Webb in our show yesterday sounded like he was suggesting that they might come from Israel.
Right. Yeah. And there's lots of things out there that are unexplained that threaten us. And you just got to get past the cognitive dissonance.
Corky, and yes, the CIA used drug sales to use force. Now that fits with something that another thing that I saw earlier on my X feed, that You're familiar with the USAID monies
Hmm.
scandal that
Of course,
that
yeah.
Elon Musk has uncovered, and I believe in it, and I do believe, that that's the way that they financed their drug experiments, in Africa and China and around the world, and I think that that's the way that they finance their operations, where they take down another government. And I think that's the way that they finance things like Al Qaeda and ISIS and you name it, any of these horrific, head chopping, militias that just pop up whenever they need to create chaos. Uh, and so what the story said was that, and I'll try to say this carefully without getting on strike, that the current what
Mm-hmm.
was generated because they didn't get enough money from USAID to complete their projects. And so they needed to make some more money. And so that's where all the money goes. Once it goes through Pfizer, then it goes into the hidden budget.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, everybody gets a cut along the way. That's the way
Oh,
these
of
things
course.
work.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that makes sense to me that, the whole pandemic has been a way to raise trillions of dollars, trillions of dollars
Yeah.
in order for them to continue doing what they're doing. And that is taking over the world and imposing the new world order that most people don't want to confront either.
And making us afraid in the process of raising all of that money. What a win-win situation for them. We become fearful, and so we start following their directives, and they start pocketing all of this money.
R.E.L. McCoy, hello. Recall one of your early programs with George when you brought up something I'd commented on in the chat. George looked up my Twitter profile and put it up on screen. And now you're famous. Okay. Well, congratulations. 15 minutes of fame. Everybody's allowed, right? Hello, Brightmore Dinosaur. Yeah, right. Jack Ruby. And yeah, and Judy Ferry Baker also agrees with, that was a cancer side. It's what I
Right.
call my Substack is called Cancer Side Journal.
Exactly.
And while most of my posts have been about my own cancer, I really do intend to broaden it and look at so many suspicious deaths like Jack Ruby and so many that, at a certain point, people are going to believe, yes, you can kill people with cancer.
Absolutely.
You can't deny it after a certain point.
I saw that Adam reposted the show that you did with him and Judith Berry Baker after the show yesterday about the JFK files.
Yeah. And she's been very active on Twitter. God bless her. She's in her 80s now. But, it took me a while to accept that she was, authentic and real, and the same Judith Berry Baker that was in the lab when she was 15 years old doing experiments on mice. But if you look at the pictures in her face, it is her. And the concerns that were raised a long time ago were based upon an imposter actually showing up at an event that Ed Haslam attended, and it confused Ed Haslam for a while until he figured it out. But you see that they put out these distractions,
exactly,
in order to muddy the water.
Yeah.
But as long as we got Judy, I suggest everybody pay attention to her. Give her the the floor to discuss what she knows, because she knows a lot.
Yeah. Well, yeah, she does indeed. Cognitive disgust.
Yeah, Corky was there at the McDuff Memorial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was. I still had a broken foot then. I was on the knee scooter.
Mm-hmm. and we went out to where my dad was buried at
Mhm.
Resurrection Cemetery,
Yeah.
and I had not realized it, but George had studied it, and he realized it that this was right next to the old colonial mansion called his lordship's kindness.
Mhm.
And his lordship kindness is this 18th century brick mansion that eventually came into the possession, I believe, of the Catholic Church.
Mhm.
And so the the defector Yuri Nosenko, who defected from the KGB, or else by other people's stories that he was a fake defector, but one way or the other, they kept him in a safe house in Clinton, Maryland, and Resurrection Cemetery is in Clinton, Maryland, and his lordship's kindness is in Clinton, Maryland.
Wow.
And I think George is right that that's where they kept Nosenko, and kept him under intense surveillance and scrutiny.
Mhm.
So that's a haunted place, and again, to have that cemetery right next to their safe house gives them a place to bury the bodies, which George pointed out too. And I think he's that um, one day when I'm ready, I'm going to try again to get him into the National Cemetery, because I think that's where he should be. The
Oh,
fact
absolutely.
that he was a Catholic at the time, Catholics were not allowed to be cremated. So that's
Right.
why we had to go in the Catholic cemetery in the first place. But um, we
Wait a
bought,
minute. Connect that thought that getting him into Arlington you could do if he'd been cremated.
yeah,
Right.
I believe so. But
Right.
that was
But you couldn't cremate him, so
out of the question.
right.
Yeah. So I'll tell you what I'm thinking is, and the thing that holds me back is that uh, I want to know whether it's possible that somebody could do a postmortem exam and see if there's evidence of SV40, which might well have been the agent that gave him the cancer, at least based on Judy Ferry Baker's work,
Wow.
or anything else that they would do, to try to just do a sample and see what comes up in the petri dish, because uh,
Did
if he was poisoned, then
yeah.
it will show up maybe even after 50 years.
Did grown-ups get that vaccine back in the late 50s, early 60s? That the vaccine that had the SV40, or was it just for children?
I don't know. I think it was just us.
Right. So there would be no reason for SV40 to be in his system
That's why I'm saying.
unless it was used
That's what I'm thinking.
as a
Is
poison.
if
Yeah.
there's SV40 in him, then it
Right.
verifies what Judith Ferry Baker is saying, is that they were
Right.
weaponizing SV40
Wow.
in order to kill Castro.
Wow.
And so if they had it there, that even though they didn't use it to kill Castro, they could use it to kill other
To
people,
kill other people.
surreptitiously without them knowing. And I think my dad is a good candidate for examining to see if that happened. And if it did happen, then it verifies a lot of what people have been saying.
Yes.
So that's one thing. And then again, I would hope that we can get him buried. Because what 3-4 years ago, and Carol McIntosh was very helpful in giving me the information of how to do it. And
Mm-hmm.
I think based upon the awards that he's had and the things that I've written about in the book, he's entitled to the Distinguished Service Cross. And if he got that, then he'd be a shoo-in to get buried.
To get buried at Arlington.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So it's really a two-step process, because that's the among the criteria for being buried at Arlington is certain awards that
Yeah.
the service member has to have received, and then can be considered for burial at Arlington. So first get him the cross.
Yeah, because you
and then he becomes eligible.
You can do posthumous
Right.
awards like that. So
Right.
again, it all is emotional to me, and I that's where my cognitive dissonance comes in, is that once I jump into this, then I'm going to have to deal with a lot of feelings,
Exactly.
and you don't want to deal with feelings. We
Right.
just don't.
Right. Although, if I may say, on this platform, dealing with feelings is good for you. Ultimately, it's just hard while it's happening.
That's for sure. And yeah, I get angry too.
Yep.
It'll be interesting to see if Jack Ruby pops up in the JFK files. Yeah. Boy, I haven't seen much interesting, but the thing is to put the deep researchers, and I count George as one of them, are going to connect dots out of this 80,000 pages. It's just going to take time to get it organized, computerized, searchable, and there will be nuggets, but nobody has given us a smoking gun, to the extent that what I want to know is, A, was there a conspiracy to kill John F. Kennedy?
Right.
Was there or not? And I want somebody of national stature in the government to answer the question, yes or no,
Right.
based on what you know today.
Right.
What is the answer? And nobody's saying nothing. They'll talk about little details. But everybody's still shy to make any conclusions.
Well, and the mainstream media are afraid. The members of the mainstream media are afraid because they are the ones with the ability to force the government officials to step up and recognize the truth or acknowledge the truth.
Mm-hmm.
But they're afraid to do it because they know that there would be consequences.
This is where we're at. This is why I'm on Twitter instead of on YouTube.
Right.
Because
Right.
and I am on YouTube today, but if there are certain words or ideas I can't share with you because of the censorship that is still imposed upon YouTube by the military. I don't think YouTube cares, what I say about a medical event that happened 6 years ago or 5 years ago now. I don't think that the administrators of YouTube are looking at it other than as a corporation to try to make money.
You know what? I think YouTube has entered the realm of mainstream media.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with YouTube, is that whatever techniques are used to keep the major newspapers, the major networks in line are being used on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are for sure. And APAC is always
Yeah.
everybody has an APAC agent that's assigned to them, that keeps an eye on them. It's amazing.
Of course, that's the American Israeli TAC, APAC.
Brightmore says also with Bill Harvey's travel records, will Bill Harvey's travel records be released? That's a good question. CIA spook Harvey was in JFK's crosshairs, so Dulles stationed Harvey in Rome. Harvey inexplicably traveled to Dallas just prior to JFK's assassination, and Harvey's travel records were for some reason classified. That's interesting, yeah. I think Harvey was also in Havana during the time they were plotting to kill Castro, or supposedly plotting to kill Castro.
Interesting.
Humorous that Trump pulled Hunter's Social Security,
Secret
Service, Social Security. I'm taking away your Social Security, God damn it! No,
no, that's different.
That's what they do to the rest of us.
Right.
All right, his SS detail, Secret Service during Hunter's vacation. Okay, yeah, in South Africa. Yeah, there's so many overtones when you say these things. Like, first of all, let's look at Secret Service in the first place, because I think Bill Taylor, our good friend and fellow researcher, has been all over this story of Ferdinand Kuhn and writing a kind of a kid's book about how to be a Secret Service agent. but underneath the idea of preparing for the possible assassination of a president in the future, if you can get somebody onto the Secret Service, then you're in. So the idea that the Secret Service really never has been reliable, well, that's the palace guard. That's, look what happened to the Romanovs. Look at a certain point, empires fall because of a rebellion in the Praetorian Guard, or
Mm-hmm.
so the Secret Service is, that's the number one easy access to the president. If you can just flip a couple of them, and I think it's pretty clear that Secret Service was grossly negligent on November 22nd, 1963, and that's putting it kindly.
Yes. Yes.
Patriot designer, I think it bears a lot of personal responsibility to act on the truth once discovered. Laziness, perhaps, let someone else fight the battle.
I think that's true. I think a lot of people are just tired, and that's again, that's part of the goal is to get us to the point that we don't have time to fight the battle. We're too busy working two jobs to support our kids, or, you know, going to school, or working two jobs because we have to pay off school loans or pay for medical care, or whatever the reason. People are busy and running. We live in these worlds where it takes where we're stuck in traffic for hours and hours, and by the time we get home, we're exhausted, and then we got to do all of this stuff at home, and the last thing in the world that we want to be doing is fighting these battles.
And, some of us are fighting these battles. I am happy to spend my time, doing it. And I'm grateful for the fact that I was able to retire from that, 9 to 5 or plus job that everybody has to have in this country. Didn't used to be that way, when the country was based on farming. It might have been a lot of hours out there working in the field, but it was your time. You picked it, and you owned it, and you didn't have to get in a car and drive into a city and breathe all that pollution, and deal with the bureaucracy, pay the parking fee, all of these things.
Sit in traffic.
But it all came into us in after World War II, when they came up with this great idea of the 30-year mortgage and the GI Bill. And people that were in the Army and the Navy, and that they came back, and they didn't have any chance to buy a house unless they took that 30-year mortgage deal.
Of course.
But boy, once you're on that treadmill, it just kills you.
Yeah.
The 30 most useful, best years of your life are spent on the rat race, and fulfilling the needs of somebody that's a little bit higher up on the food chain. And you never get to find out who you are and what your real talents are.
Right.
Um,
Right. Well, and they're also spent raising children and trying to provide for your children.
Absolutely. And then, of course, layer on top of that all of the biological warfare that nobody wants to talk about. But we talk about that here big time with our friend Adam A.W. Finnegan, the author of The Sleeper Agent.
Yep.
I saw some of the disclosures were highlighted by Mike Benz, who's a very popular social media blogger and ex-State Department guy. And he is highlighting a number of pages that refer to the Pentagon approving Lyme disease experiments. And so that's interesting, that there's another wedge opening to dig into the biological warfare that I'm convinced we've been subjected to and still are. So that's another hopeful sign that new stuff is coming out. And
Yeah, interesting. It kind of makes a link, or perhaps could make a link to building on the work of Eric Traub.
Well, look at this. Little fanfare for SpaceX bringing home the stranded Can you believe that? Remember when the astronauts used to come home and they'd splash down in the ocean and everybody watched it. That was,
Hmm.
the three parachutes and the
Right.
the capsule comes down, and it was like this was like a national event, maybe a worldwide event. And now you've just had this event where it's equally important, uh, in my mind, because these NASA couldn't get these people back without some help, so
From Elon.
they called on Elon, and then suddenly the media doesn't cover it at all. It's
Well, you and I watched it when they were coming down. Don't you remember that night? Wait, I had it on the iPad and we were having dinner and watched it come down. But that was from the NASA feed. I don't know if it was on TV or not. But I have to tell you, and maybe it's because of the things that I follow, but it's been all over my social media still.
oh,
Even this morning.
oh, good.
Yeah. I mean, I'm seeing tons and tons and tons of posts from all different sources about their return and
Hmm.
what it means to come back to Earth and to have to relearn how to function in gravity. And the thing that I love about those two astronauts more than anything is their ages. Do you realize how old they are?
No.
She's 59, and I believe he's early 60s. And whoa, how cool is that? People, I mean, technically, they're our generation who are still active astronauts. I love that.
Yeah, but how old were they before they went into space?
I don't think that they're ages. Now, you've been watching too much science fiction.
Bob Marley, let's get together
Yeah,
and feel all right.
yeah. I think that comment was put up there when we were talking about people being cancer sighted.
Oh, of course. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And Bob Marley, absolutely.
yep.
It's there's another one. Colby's son is alive. Why don't I talk to him? You know,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is the guy that is alleged to have given Bob Marley a pair of boots with something in them, maybe a coil of wire or something, to get some cancer into him through his feet. And I'm sure he denies it, but where's the where's the investigation of that? And to me, it's just I don't see what I would gain by talking to Colby's kids. Although the more I learn, the more I realize that Colby and my dad must have known each other, and
Right.
and probably, uh, I could learn a lot if I investigated that. But
Maybe, but you don't want to investigate other murders either. I mean, that kind of takes you a little bit off track. There's only so many murders you can investigate, and your dad is going to stay top of the list always. And you don't want to take time away from that. As it relates to
yeah,
your dad, that makes sense.
right.
But I doubt, Colby's son
You-
may know about Colby, but
But the question is, can anybody wrap their arms around the whole big conspiracy and say, oh well, all of this, was put together by Alan Dulles, or all of this was put together by Ben Gurion, or can anybody wrap their arms around all of these really unsettling murders that have never been solved?
yeah, yeah.
Brightmore says rising cancer should be no
Mhm.
surprise with the advent of 5G. I don't know. I'm not sure about that. I'm not aware of anything that pins rising cancer on 5G in particular.
Well, 5G is not ubiquitous. There are some companies calling their services 5G when they really aren't. And the 5G antennas, as much as, those who are promoting that would like. They're still not everywhere, but the rise in cancer rate is everywhere. Is there a connection? Perhaps, but I don't think that that's the primary driver of the rise of cancer rate.
Jonathan Edward Gibson. Hello. Welcome. Oh, okay. I lived in the 80s in New Orleans and found myself at Ochsner over years and can verify Jack Kruse descriptions, including seeing the nuclear SV-40 adjacent machinery and wondering. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, Jack Kruse has verified a lot of what Judith Very Baker says. He's a very interesting and very intellectual guy who got a lot of print or eyeballs on his media because of his work about red light therapy and the circadian rhythm and the importance of sunlight. And he writes very well, but his ability to describe the quantum mechanics in cells that is the basis of what he's saying. He's got physics, he's got neurology, he's got just a ton of scientific knowledge that he can put together. So I think he's really, really worth studying. He went a little too far with the SV-40, I think, but the idea of everybody paying attention to SV-40 generally, and once again listening to Judith Very Baker, I think that's very, very helpful. And for Jonathan, thank you for verifying what Jack says in the whole story. I've read Dr. Mary's Monkey a number of times. If anybody hasn't read it, I think you need to, especially if you're interested in the Ochsner Clinic and what went on in New Orleans, because once you read that book, then it changes you. You can't deny it anymore. And all of these soft tissue cancers that Ed Haslam predicted it in his book, in 1970 something, and here we are with all of these cancers: breast cancer, prostate, melanoma.
Right.
Yep. Well, there's Brightmore with the question. That's the idea, is that I don't want to just move him over there. I want to try to get some, medical examiner to do some tests and get his DNA and see what we can learn. Corky, this sounds technical. Our newest secret lethality is scalar. Ray guns use nuke tech and transcend it via alchemy. We can power cities with it. Grid can be included and transcend to structural transcendentalism.
Whoa, way over my head.
Well, the idea is good. It's another example to me of like the LaRouche People's Oasis project in Gaza. The idea is, with proper technology, you could turn the place green. You could be growing, crops and feeding, huge populations. You could make the whole area into a paradise.
Mm-hmm.
And, with technology, we can do that now. The question is, why don't we? We could solve these cancer questions. The question is, why don't we?
Well, and we all know what the answer is.
Well, I think it's depopulation. I think that it's eugenics and depopulation. That's what I think.
Well, it's also the money. Stop and think about it. What would happen? First of all, think about how much money is spent on cancer.
Yeah.
In terms of research, jobs, income, all of those things.
Right.
Now, what if we were to discover a substance that is readily available and grows in nature or comes from nature that not only cures cancer, but prevents cancer? What would happen to that entire industry that has been built? This multi-billion-dollar, maybe trillion, dollar industry that has been built would collapse. And that would be a financial disaster. So, who's going to promote that? Who's going to promote this idea of curing cancer with something that doesn't make money because it's so readily available in nature? It would be a horrible, horrible financial mess with tons of jobs lost and tons of income lost. Tons isn't even the right word. Again, it would be billions of dollars. I can't even begin to imagine. The cancer industry is too big to fail, and it would fail. So,
Too big to fail. Sounds like the mafia to me.
yeah.
I mean, sounds very similar. And as we know, I mean, the mafia invests its money somewhere. They invested in defense contractors.
Mm-hmm.
They invested in big pharma.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then sometimes a big pharma executive ends up dead because maybe he didn't do what he was suggested to do,
right,
with regard to issuing prescriptions for fentanyl. You know, that's a story that's, what, 2, 3 months old. It's pretty much forgotten now, but
how quickly those things get forgotten.
oh yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, that's
I
that's
can't
right.
even think of the guy's name now. And it was all over the news for about a week, and then boom, gone. The next shiny thing came along for us to talk about.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even then, because even before my dad died, my grandpa, his father, had put a lot of, just, I don't know if intentionally or not, but put suspicion in me about the whole thing. His grandpa he would shake his head and say, too soon, too soon.
Yeah.
And he talked to the top medical people in Connecticut, where he was, fairly well inside, that. And, he was convinced that it was a cancer side. He didn't say so in so many words, but I could just tell from various
No. Who's he going to
things that he
say it
said.
to? Maybe he said
Yeah.
it to your mother, but he's not going to say it to his young grandchildren.
Yeah.
And yes, you were what, 19, 20?
Yeah.
But still, you're still at a point that he's not going to say those things to you. He was protecting you. I'm going to have to look up that word.
Google owns, hello, imagine that. Google owns YouTube, and Google was created by the CIA. Well,
there you have it.
I guess I'm just crazy then to keep pushing here. But what else is there? Where else?
Well, that's the problem. You have been reaching out on Rumble, but it's not reaching the number of people. And
Yeah.
mainstream media reaches so many more people. And that's exactly what I'm going to start calling YouTube.
Et tu, Brute. Yeah. The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves. And happy birthday. Happy birthday to McDuff. Hello, Catherine. The art of war. You have to recognize a fait accompli. Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah. Well, so much has been done already. Is there any chance of reversing it? Or are we, yeah, there's a lot of folks out there that are, I guess I'll say her voye morage. I look forward to talking to him next Tuesday. We have a monthly get together on McDuff Lives at 11 a.m. on Tuesday, on every other Tuesday. No, once a month on Tuesday. Anyway, her voye morage is, the last time we talked was, he's Christian, and he's puts it right out there in front that, yes, I'm a Christian. I believe in the Bible. And I love that. But when he starts thinking, that this is the end times, then I feel like that's not helpful. why should we just decide, oh, well, you know what? The world's going to end in a few years anyway, so why should I try to fix it?
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
and that's, I guess, what I'm trying to say is that if it's the end times, it's the end times, but I don't have any control over that. But what I do have control over is how I spend my day today. And what I want to do today is to try to make the world a better place for the future, and to try to stop what I see a hellbound train of totalitarian dictatorial nightmare descending upon the world, a la 1984 and George Orwell. And I want to do what I can to alert people and to try to stop this horrible, horrible train.
Mhm.
But that's what I want to do. YouTube is using AI to create videos to flood our screens with limited hangouts for various political events, and the algos clearly favor the AI created videos over those of us analog people.
Yep.
Yes, the organic human creators. I'm an analog man. It happens. You'd love to work on a farm for how long? Oh, down here in Southern Maryland, people worked on the farms. You still hear people talk about, how horrible it was to have to go out and pick beans all day by hand,
Sure.
before mechanized farming. But
Well, and, are we talking about farms that raise animals? Because if that's the case, even no matter how humanely they're raised, ugh, I can't even go there.
media is not reporting the scale of American involvement in the tax threat. Right, Yemen, and
Yeah. So I get up the other morning and I'm looking at the news and I read that we have bombed Yemen. And it's not a big deal.
right.
Wait
I
a minute.
thank you.
We are the United States. What do you mean we bombed Yemen and it's not a big deal? It's like, this buried news story that's on the 5th page of whatever it is I'm looking at.
Yeah, if you want to object to what Trump is doing, why don't you stand up and say, hey, that's violating the Constitution. We do not bomb people without Congress declaring war.
Right.
You didn't go to Congress. You didn't go to the magical group of 8 or whoever they are that supposedly, are authorized to speak for the Congress on these matters. You didn't do nothing. You just said, okay, go bomb them.
Yeah.
And that is, consistent with the fact that our country is subtly but obviously over time being taken over by a totalitarian force that, goes back to Alan Dulles and the sacred team, the work we've done studying Fletcher Prouty. And then, what I see is, I have done a number of shows on Saxa lately, is that they parked a lot of that secret stuff under the Saxa, you know,
Sure.
umbrella.
Yep.
That's the reason why I keep saying, what we need is more disclosure from Saxa from the 1961 to 1974 or so. And that's why you're not going to see Saxa in the JFK records. I think George has already looked through to look for it, but it's part of the whole thing. And okay, that's enough of that. Let's see.
Yeah, we're actually running very short on
And
time.
I got to get going because I have a 1 o'clock uptown first.
Uptown.
A little, yeah, in the big city of Waldorf, Maryland.
That's right. I don't think anybody has ever referred to Waldorf as uptown.
And
Yeah, a lot of comments that we didn't get to.
scopolamine is something that I want to talk about someday. No time for now, though. I have to say
Wow.
thank you to everybody for joining us, and I will be back on Monday morning and at 11 a.m. Not sure what I'm doing on Monday yet, but I'll be studying things all weekend, and I will be sure to have a interesting topic for everybody then.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Marcia. Thank you all for helping me celebrate my dad's birthday, and keep on with the keeping on. Right?
Right, there you go.
All right. Everybody have a great day. Bye bye.